They even in the court documents they said, okay, the guy used a mixer. Okay, if he used a mixer, then how can you verify that that money came from him?
So you had this interview, and I totally forgot to pull up his Twitter again. I know I followed him after you had him on your stream, but I think everybody, I don't know if enjoy is the right word. That's what I wrote down here. We appreciate that you interviewed the attorney, but I think it was definitely, I remember actually your text and token cohort, Matt, Crypto Harpy, calling it a sobering interview. I think that was a perfect word for it. But he did, he's an attorney, and he kind of presumed, he was presuming the side of the SEC and what they'll have to prove based on what their claims are and how he would go about doing it, and all the extremes that could lead to. I'm trying to remember when that was pretty quickly out of the gate from the July 31st complaint. I mean, we're looking probably 6 weeks ago at least. How are you kind of feeling about that 6 weeks or so on? Because I think, everybody was kind of like, oh, Jesus, like, why did he put this stream up? And, you were I loved your attitude about it because you were very unapologetic with like, hey, I'm just, I'm just the facts, and I appreciate that. But how are you feeling now this far out of it? And how are you feeling right away, right after the interview?
Going into that interview, I sat there and guys, I've got hex bags. Okay, I'm fudding my own bags, right? But here's the thing: I'm a strong believer that the power that we wield as a community is a power that's based in truth and not deception. And what caused me to do this was all the craziness that I was seeing on Twitter about the basically street lawyers saying this and saying that. And I had to get clarification now. Why? It's because when we're on Twitter, we forget that these are families. These are heads of household. They put their money in these things because they expect it to go up. Maybe they don't expect it to go up technically, but you know what I mean? It's crypto. And we have to remember that these are real people out there, and they have real consideration in some of these things. And I just felt like getting the side of a real life attorney with regards who has argued all sorts of things in appellate courts and all over the United States, has a good idea of how this stuff works. We needed to get him on stream and get his opinion from the viewpoint of the SEC so people could understand 100%, no doubt, what we could be facing. And, I did get DMs. People are like, dude, you shouldn't have done that and this and that. We don't need to operate that. We're not crypto bros here. Okay. We do crypto different here. It's the truth engine. Okay. That's what Hex is. So let's go ahead and act like it, and let's let people know where we stand, and we're stronger for it. So, I'm glad that we got all that out because it answered so many questions that people had.
I agree with you. Yeah. And by the way, before I forget, I went ahead and looked them up. It's BitLaw at Crypto BitLaw.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's got a link to his YouTube and stuff as well. But yeah, definitely a lot of sobering things did take place there. Now, you were also talking about, and made to be busy, whatever, but I'm curious as to where a lot of people were like imploring you then afterwards and wondering if you could get somebody on that would take a look at that from potentially Richard's side. And here's the thing, I feel like that is a lot more complicated to get somebody to replicate that because, number one, the SEC, we are the plaintiff. We know what the complaint is. We know what they're saying here, that we know what they're going to have to try to prove. Richard is the defendant, who is presumably a billionaire with God knows what at his disposal resource-wise, because money does talk. How could an attorney even really – I mean, I feel like they'd only be kind of guessing or speculating, but like, could they really dial in what his strategies may be? I don't know if maybe that's a challenge you're having in getting somebody to maybe take that other side.
Yeah, I don't actually think it would be that difficult if the attorney that we were talking to took the time to understand Hex's history. So, one of the complaints at the very beginning of that court document had to do with, wash trading, okay, during the adoption amplifier. And what they don't realize is that there were basically two prices for hex, and people were getting a certain amount of hex at the end of every single day, and then some people who were trying to game the system, they would go on Uniswap where there were pairs traded, and they would basically profit off of the cheap hex that they got in the adoption amplifier, and people were doing that until somebody, we don't know who, we might presume it might be Richard, but somebody was going in and saying, you know what, screw that. He would buy the price up or sell the price down to make sure it matched the adoption, the lobby, essentially. So it's like the court documents said that was his version of wash trading to try to simulate high volume. And I'm like, if you've listened to anything Richard ever has said, he's like, Hex doesn't have high volume. We don't want high volume. That means people are getting wrecked if you have high volume.
Yeah.
So it's like little things like that. And remember what I said, it's, layers or dominoes. If you can just establish a pattern of the SEC not understanding what they're talking about with these first couple layers, I think it really helps out our case. And I think that this would be, I would take this case. I don't know much about law, but I see how little they know about what they've been talking about here. And, they, even in the court documents, they said, okay, the guy used a mixer. Okay. If he used a mixer, then how can you verify that money came from him or went to his account, or that 12 million? You don't. Okay. And I'm like, just simple stuff like that. So we'll see.
Yeah, the whole misappropriation of funds is easily provable. I mean, that's what blockchain's for.
Well, so. Here's the thing: like, how are they going to prove that wasn't? Okay, so how are they going to prove that was not him actually enriching himself, and it was for marketing purposes?
Sure.
Okay, we'll take that side, but then the other side is, like, how can you prove that wasn't his own money? That $12 million, you're coming after a guy for $12 million misappropriated funds, investor funds, and over $1 billion was raised. You freaking kidding me? It's
right.
So weak. So
yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think that's maybe the weakest part of their whole complaint, because like Ewok just said, it is provable on the defense's side. Like literally, like you can see the funds are there. But even again, like you guys are saying too, I mean, even if it was actually funds, I mean, are you not allowed to profit from something that you've created and purchase something like that? And then you've got the whole marketing of the diamond idea and stuff like that. So I just, something to remember. I think Johnny was saying this on that stream with Matty Allen last night. He was saying like, these are all, this is how you negotiate. So they come to the table with this complaint that has a lot of this complete garbage in it, like, oh, you will swear that Scout's honor you will not talk about crypto ever again, which is just preposterous, like to even attempt to enforce or anything like that. It's just, this is how you get to the bargaining table, and they're just going to throw everything they can out there first. And I think that's something that maybe some of us should remind ourselves is like, as many things are in there, keep in mind that, again, that is how you negotiate. You start at the top, and then you realize you're not going to get hardly any of it and meet somewhere in the middle,
Yeah, he defrauded investors because he used the money in the wrong way. That's what this all boils down to. Okay, if this isn't a security, they're saying it's a security first, so that's layer one. That's step one. If they can prove it's a security, then go to step two, and they can say, okay, that $12 million shouldn't have been used to buy XYZ. Now prove, that's step two. If they can't prove it's a security in the first place, there is no misappropriation of funds, and there is no defrauding. So it's like, it's going to be interesting to see all this play out, because, I think it was Bretep, right? Richard's developer, when somebody made some post when Richard was walking through the store with his Prada bags or whatever. And I think it was some major influencer saying, Richard was buying all this stuff from the store and blah, blah. And Bretep, he gets in the comments and he says, you got any receipts? ? And I thought that was pretty substantial, because that's coming one person removed from Richard. And it's almost like saying, hey, okay, show us the receipts then. Wise guy, show us the receipts, SEC. Prove that money came there. And I think they're saying, hey, it's impossible to prove. That's what I think.
I agree.